Hey guys, it's Alex West, host of the And1 podcast, reminding you can subscribe on SoundCloud, on iTunes, on YouTube, wherever it is you listen to the podcast. You can follow me on Twitter at AlexWestNBA. You can follow the show on Twitter at And1 Analytics, just so you're the most up to date and getting all my sweet NBA hot takes. And speaking of NBA hot takes, today I'm joined by Corbin Ford, social media director for the 94 Feet Report, as well as prominent contributor to their YouTube series, The Swingmen. And he is going to give us the lowdown on his beloved Los Angeles Lakers. We're going to talk about their development this season and then the prominent questions that they have going forward into the offseason about whether they should go after a max player, should they ride out what they have with their young core. So I really enjoyed talking with Corbin. It's a great show. Give it a listen, and Brent, take us away. So I'm joined by my guest today, Corbin Ford. Corbin, how are you, sir?
Hey, man, I'm doing good. Great to be back on.
I'm glad to have you. We have been working on this for a couple of weeks, and we finally got all the pieces put together to have you here, and I'm glad to have you. Now, if you don't know Corbin, he is a man who wears many hats. He is our social media director for the 94 Feet Report. He's the co-host of the 94 Feet podcast, and he's also a very regular contributor to the Swingmen, which is our YouTube show. This is a media mogul that we have on the program today.
You flattered me, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, he took over for doing our Twitter page last week, a couple weeks ago, and has just been doing a bang-up job getting everybody involved. And so, Corbin, today you're not on as our social media director, though. Today you were on as our resident Lakers fan. A lot to talk about, a lot to take apart from this season. It's been an interesting year, but it's been a growing year for the Lakers, who look like, they're going to finish under 500. They're going to miss out on the playoffs. But all of that aside, I still believe that you'll probably take away a positive outlook from this season.
Oh, most definitely. We're on pace actually to get 36 wins. That's something I wish we've had maybe the last couple of years. I like the way that our pace, we're second league in pace, and we've always talked about being – we haven't always talked about, but being a running team, kind of pushing the tempo there. And there's some good quality young pieces here that we're starting to really see them grow, with some in their second or third year and with Lonzo Ball in his first, but we're really starting to see the potential foundation and on the court and showing their stuff instead of just talking about it while, as they're getting drafted in summer league. It was really cool to kind of put them in the fire and see certain players, particularly Kuzma, really show up. We have seen Lonzo Ball kind of flourish in certain areas, struggle in others, but he looks pretty solid in my opinion. There are some question marks. We'll get back to that. Kuzma in particular, for someone drafted later in the first round, has really just been a revelation at the small forward, power forward position. And as we saw yesterday against the Spurs, just clutch, man. And there's Josh Hart. There's the coaching we've had has been pretty good. We've had Channing Frye and Isaiah Thomas coming midseason, which was a good and a bad thing. It's been a lot, but there's a lot to take away from it in a positive way. And going into this offseason, I mean, these teams' fortunes could transform in a couple months.
Yeah, and it certainly seems like over the past couple of months, the Lakers have hit a couple home runs, and not the least of which is Kuzma, drafted at 27 in the 2017 draft, and then Josh Hart drafted 30th. These are two guys. When you get into the late rounds, mathematics will say that you're probably not going to find regular contributors at 27 and 30. But the Lakers struck gold not once but twice. And Hart, hasn't played as many minutes. He hasn't had as large an impact, but he certainly has been efficient. He's been a really nice scorer, and he's a really smart basketball player. And that's what you see out of these Villanova guys who come out. You see guys who just know where to be. So I didn't imagine I was going to start on Josh Hart, but, while we're here, let's talk about him. I have been really impressed with the way he plays for this team as a young guy. He's a really efficient scorer, and he does a lot of other things. He defends a little bit better than I thought he would. Just a guy who is giving a lot to a team where I don't think anyone imagined that he would be in the rotation or anything of that magnitude when the season started.
I can be agree with you on that note. I'm basically one of those people myself in that sense where he when he was drafted, I looked at him a little bit in Villanova, and I was like, wow, he has some potential. Average shooting guard, in my opinion, but he really digs down the defensive end. He's not really making mistakes himself. He knows his role. He knows where to be. As you said, he's very efficient, shooting 45% from the field, 38% clip from three. Just a really solid player, and he fits right in with this young core. 23, we get that, but I mean, the Lakers, at least their young players, are all in that 22 to 24 range. They're young ones, and this is good to see him slide in there as well. And what I've also liked is that Coach Walton, and he does this a lot, but playing players out of position to kind of let them develop in certain areas, which I feel is great on a rebuilding team or a team that's not expected to compete for the playoffs or really make a run, because it forces players to do things that they normally wouldn't do, but not in the sense of, let's say, the Memphis Grizzlies playing, power forwards at small forward positions or putting them in situations where they would never be at. At least with Josh Hart, just as with Brandon Ingram before him, you're developing that ball handling distribution skills. And I think that only bodes well for him in his development in the future. But back to what we're just saying, per 36 minutes, 11 points per game, 6.5 rebounds, and 2 assists for Josh Hart. And like I said, this age 22 season, he did have a little bit of a derailed with the broken hand, but other than that, man, there's a lot to take away from him. And really, that wasn't, when he was drafted late in the first round, you don't really have that many high expectations for him. Just be someone that can contribute. But in my opinion, he's really kind of carved his role out on this young team moving forward.
Yeah, and like you said, like a little bit small to play shooting guard, still doing that. So from time to time, still playing, handling the ball, playing point guard, doing a lot of things that the Lakers really needed from a bench player. And he's played a lot, about 60% of his minutes at shooting guard. He's played a little bit of point guard, and he's played a little bit of small forward. So like you talked about, sort of moving him around, letting him get the experience that he needs. I feel like he's going to be a pretty valuable contributor for this team, just sort of going forward. And that leads into talking about another guy. Let's talk about Kyle Kuzma. I don't know. I can't say enough about this guy. The more I watch him, he's an electric scorer. He is very clutch. He's a guy who just gets the job done. And I really liked Kuzma last year, particularly after the Combine. I really liked how he scored the basketball. And to see this sort of payoff, that feels good to see as a Lakers fan, because you got Ball, and obviously you expected Lonzo Ball to be the feature piece of this draft, and then and he's played well, but then to get Kuzma to just be this revelation. He's leading the team in scoring right now at 16.3 points per game. He's a great rebounder, 6.3 rebounds. He can distribute the ball a little bit. Talk a little bit about Kyle Kuzma for me, Corbin.
I've been impressed with Kyle Kuzma. He's been my favorite player aside from Julius Randle on this Lakers team. And for someone, spent 4 years, University of Utah, was a pretty solid player there, definitely. Did not have the three-point stroke or didn't really flash as much as we see in the NBA. And it was kind of shocking to see that in Summer League. Summer League came and he was just setting Summer League ablaze with his shooting and scoring. And I was, part of me is like, oh my God, we have a stud. Actually, being just total Lakers fan, that's all I was thinking. There was no reservation in my thought process. Like, yes, he's going to be one of those players to add. There's nothing wrong with him. He's going to just set the world on fire once he gets in the league. And there were certain, detractors saying, hey, it's only Summer League. Then he did in preseason. Hey, it's only preseason. And then the first couple of weeks of regular season, you saw he's been pretty consistent all year. There was, of course, a little bit of a lag toward the end of last year, the beginning of the new year, where his numbers slumped a little bit, as to be expected for a rookie in that rookie wall. But 16 points per game, 6 rebounds, just 2 assists, effective field goal percentage of 52.9, 36% from 3, 45% from the field, and he's doing this on a healthy 13 attempts per game. He's getting his shots up, and as you said, he has an array of ways to get his buckets. He's a solid shooter from behind the arc, just all around. He has a really good old-fashioned Kareem Abdul-Jabbar hook shot that he goes to. There's a running hook that he just gets on that right side. That's just crazy. His post-up game is very polished. A lot of craft when it comes to finishing around the rim. It's just a lot of ways he's able to get his shots up and in. And with that and his rebounding, man, he's just been just really, really good. It's almost crazy to see that for someone drafted that late. And obviously, I'm not going to do the draft game. Well, if we redrafted, where would he be? But but it is really encouraging to see this in only his first year. And it's just, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm really encouraged as well. He hasn't played small forward quite as much, and I understand that just with defensive limitations, with quickness aside and all. But if you, let's say you look at this lineup next year, and I don't want to get ahead of myself here, but let's say Brook Lopez isn't part of the picture, and in my opinion, I don't think he will be. You slot Julius Randle, yes, undersized to center, and then you just carve out that role for Kyle Kuzma at power forward. I think he can really flourish there with his just complete offensive skill set.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And we're going to dig into the Brook Lopez, Julius Randle numbers momentarily. But to sort of speak to your point, I agree with you in the way that Kuzma has rebounded. And then in the other way that I really like Kuzma is he's actually a really good isolation scorer. He's a guy that you can sort of run floppy for and isolate him on one side of the court. And then he can just do it. And you saw just a touch of that last night. Where he just sort of got isolated against Kyle Anderson, against a couple other guys for the Spurs, and he could just kind of take it to him. And that, to me, is such a huge, huge asset for a team. That Lonzo Ball, fantastic IQ, really, really high IQ player guy. I really love watching him play. Not a scorer. Ingram, good scorer. I have a couple issues we'll get into with him later. But when you have a guy who can just take it to the block or isolate on one side and just score baskets, and, it doesn't matter if he's 22, if he's 25, but Kyle Kuzma looks like he's been in the league for 4 years when I see him get the ball in his hands.
No, he as you said, he's very, very polished and complete. And it just shows in all aspects because he knows where to be. He has such poise, such control. And, I'm not even going to lie. I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting, a good solid stud we could throw in there, possibly give some competition for Larry Nance Jr. at the time. A little more touch outside than Larry Nance Jr. That's what was going through my mind when he was drafted. But to see him, as you said, just very, very polished and great in isolation. He was killing Danny Green and Kyle Anderson yesterday and really took over by himself down the fourth quarter and in that first couple minutes of overtime to really put the game away for the Lakers. So he's someone who definitely, only 22 at the time, going to his 23 season next year, he's definitely going to be someone to just, salivate over as far as a player potential level because he has it all. I mean, there's obviously some things he can work on, but on the offensive end, I really don't see a problem with him other than maybe being more aware of, the open man. Sometimes when he getting that heat check moment or when he really is on a roll, as most players will do, he'll kind of just zone in and just look for that shot, maybe not see a cutter on the weak side or a KCP popping around the screen, just little things like that. But he's not even that bad at that. So I'm all on the Kuzma train, man. I'm telling you.
Well, here's the thing. He kind of gets those blinders, like you said, like focused on scoring. He kind of gets just in the zone. Honestly, at 22 years old and a rookie who's scoring this well, this efficiently, all these things, I think I'm of the flaws that he could have. I would honestly rather have him shoot a little too much, and it's not even drastic. It's just a little bit, like you said, like. He'll get hot. He'll hit 2 threes in a row, and then all of a sudden he's trying to do that drive to the basket, lefty run-in hook flip thing he does against 2 guys, and you're like, all right, well, let's kick it out on that one. But, when it comes to just watching his game, this kid has been so impressive this year. And this is going back a little bit to your earlier point. Just wanted to throw this in here. Since the post-All-Star break, when Julius Randle and Kyle Kuzma are playing the 4 and the 5 without Brook Lopez, their defensive rating 89.6, their offensive rating 115.7. It's a net rating of 26.1, and that's not a small sample size. Yeah, 145 minutes since after the All-Star break, with a pretty significant sample size of showing that a Randle-Kuzma backcourt pairing actually kind of works. Now, as with all things, there are noise in these defensive efficiency numbers, but I imagine, as you move forward, just the ability to see in that small sample size that this is an effective lineup, that has a lot of encouraging signs for this team.
It really does, and especially showing that they're still so young. I mean, obviously, as we're going to get into a little bit later, the offseason is really going to loom over this team and where they decide to go and what ownership is going to do here or management. But not only does it show that they can play together and play effectively, but that there's so much more room left to grow. And yeah, they're 22, 23, but there's still plenty of development there. I mean, I can see if they're like 24, 25 and starting to crest as a player. There's still certain things they can still pick up. Julius Randle can still become a more confident shooter from outside, maybe with a more consistent touch. I mean, the jury's still out on that, but I kind of have hope that he can. Kyle Kuzma just being a little more, maybe building his court awareness, even becoming better in isolation and really working on some ball handling there. Those two in particular, since we're talking about them, have room to grow. But I'm really encouraged by 3 or 4 of these young guys here. I mean, this team here, there's a lot of pieces, and if they all perform at even, I don't know, 85% of their potential, man, we could be in a good spot. And there I go saying we like I'm a member of the Lakers, but they could be in a good spot here in the next two seasons, in my opinion.
I totally agree. This is a team on the rise, and I think that the things that happened this year, and so there are 2 factors that I just want to talk about briefly. Is one of them is the sort of coming together moment after LeVar Ball said that nobody believed in Luke Walton, and all of a sudden the team was just clicking on all cylinders. Hey, January was one of their best months, and I have that number somewhere. I can't find it right offhand, but I know that they were, like 7-3 or something really spectacular in that month, and that was just sort of off those comments that LeVar Ball made. And then the other thing that I really think helped this team, and it's a little bit of a deep cut, is the fact that they don't have their own draft pick this year. I think that tanking, call it whatever it is, it's sort of teams will sit players who are hot. You saw it the other night in the Bulls had a big win where they set Lauri Markkanen for the whole fourth quarter, even though he was having a fantastic game. And I think that by the very virtue of the fact that the Lakers did not control their own pick this year, all they had to do was win. And to me, building a franchise with a bunch of young guys and then having them go out there every night, not only trusting their coach, trusting their lineups, but believing that all they have to do is win is just fundamentally such a huge thing for this team that I think you can't really overlook it.
No, I'm right there with you. It kind of gives them the freedom to just go, hey, we're doing the best we can. We're competing. And each win means something because you're not playing to lose. And there's no internal sabotage going on where, Julius Randle has just been awesome, and now he sits the second half. Or, Lonzo Ball, like he played the last time against the Spurs, was really cooking from 3, and then he doesn't play in crunch time down the stretch. It gives them that freedom to go out there, show their stuff, and try to contribute to wins that actually matter for this team. Because, yes, we're not competing for a playoff spot, although about 3 to 4 weeks ago, we were almost on the outside looking in real close to that. But, I digress. Back to where we are now, it's not even about that. And they're not trying to play spoiler or anything. This is just setting a foundation, seeing what works, getting some good quality wins against teams because they're playing, even with a depleted injury lineup right now with Lonzo Ball and others out. But that's a different story. But just working on, setting the foundation for next season. You want to end the season on a high note. And we say that a lot, and that's used, it's so cliche, but it's very true. And build with that, and then next season go, okay, you know what? We ended the season strong. We almost doubled our win output. Well, we did double our win output from the previous season, maybe even 2 seasons, and now we're going to go and get better. And obviously, that's what ownership and management's really looking at. But even for the players themselves, it's a totally different mindset when ownership and management's making the call for you, and yet they're in sync where management's like, hey, we're going to win. The players like, you know what, man, I'm tired of losing. I want to be in the playoffs. Julius Randle been in the NBA for 3 seasons now, and he wants to get there. LeVar Ball's been talking like Lonzo's going to make it there his first season. Obviously, didn't take into account his shooting struggles or injuries. But point being, this is really the groundwork to what a good, successful franchise becomes. And this Lakers are already a storied franchise, but with young players and just this whole youth movement, basically, with a couple of veterans where they go, hey, this is how we win. this is how we win the right way. This is how we win our way.
Yeah, when you look back at the schedule, you see these moments throughout the year where there were like just sort of the light clicked on. And one of them that sort of sticks out to me was the home win on January 23rd against the Celtics. And you watch that game, and the Celtics are a hot team. I mean, Kyrie Irving is playing. This is a team that is really doing something spectacular. And the Lakers won that game. They just outright beat the Celtics, out hustled them, worked on the glass. And when you start to pick through the schedule, you see wins over Oklahoma City, over San Antonio. You see these little moments where the flash of a complete team is sort of put together. And I remember sitting there, watching that game back in January, and thinking this team is terrifying. Kuzma got hot in the fourth quarter. He was very difficult to stop. And you just sort of saw the birth of a team that was going to click on all cylinders. And obviously it didn't carry over because they're a young team. The Sixers have set this impossible standard that young teams can just come in and be good. But I think in actuality, we have a lot more proof that young teams take some time. But basically, my point in all of this is saying that there are moments when you watch this team where you are terrified of what they can become. I mean, not you personally, because you're exhilarated about what they can become, but this is a good young roster. I mean, I know I've said that a lot, and I'll keep saying it a lot because I have thoroughly enjoyed watching this team this year, and I probably watched them 30, 35 times. And every time I watch them, they look engaged. They look like they're ready to play and ready to win. And I can't speak enough about how much that says about Coach Luke Walton, about Magic Johnson, about the enthusiasm that surrounds this program.
And that's just the word, enthusiasm, because there really is a lot to like. I'm looking, as you say, up and down January and February where, the Lakers, the one on March, well, this is actually March, but March 3rd, the win over San Antonio, where Julius Randle led with points with 25. Caldwell-Pope had 13 rebounds and Lonzo Ball had 11 assists. Or, against Denver, where you had, oh my goodness, I'm losing his name here, but Julius Randle leading in scoring, Lonzo Ball leading in distributing assists. And you basically, it's not even a big deal here, but looking up and down and saying, okay, this Laker is good with scoring, getting to the rack, being aggressive, collecting rebounds. That's Julius Randle. I could name these qualities and these like this archetype player, and we almost have that on our team. And so when you have a team victory, everyone playing at their best or up at some, part of that, and then you just see the results, it is encouraging. It is exciting. And we see players now where, I mean, as long as ownership doesn't end up trading them for some over-the-hill vet or something, and I don't see that happening, this is a really good groundwork that we can look at and go, you know what? We're going to be among the top 5-6 teams in the Western Conference in the next 2 years. And that is encouraging and it is exciting, especially for a Lakers team who's really kind of forsaken that developmental side in exchange for going for veterans that we couldn't get or just swinging and missing in free agency again and again and again. And the way we dealt with D'Angelo Russell and the way that we pretty much dealt with Jordan Clarkson. There was different personnel decisions that Lakers fans, I know definitely myself, questioned and continue to question, but to see how they're treating these players here, it's something that we can take away and really be excited for going into the 2018-2019 season.
Yeah, and I think, you talk about how the Lakers have shifted gears. Obviously, the change in management, Mitch Kupchak, Jerry Buss, that ran the team for years, and they sort of thought about things one way. Jeannie Buss, Luke Walton, Magic Johnson sort of think about things another way. And I tend to sort of agree with this second way in that if you build from the draft, you have the ability, you have and what we're going to see this summer is the cap flexibility because you built with young guys on reasonable contracts. Randall's deal is up now. And we'll sort of see how that goes and get into that in a minute. But you have Ingram on his rookie contract. You have Kuzma. You have Ball. You have Hart. You have a nice young core of guys on reasonable contracts. And then they gave the contract what I like to call the placeholder contract to Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, where they earmarked $20 million to be available next summer, which was and I had said this at the time, just one of the most astute moves by Rob Pelinka was to just earmark that money for next summer when there's going to be big free agents and to continue to develop these guys. And I think the way they've developed this year is just part and parcel approval for how they've gone about it, because this is a team that is growing, that is getting better, but also is very young and still controls a lot of their destiny when it comes to having these players under contract.
That is true. And I would like to point out, I did like that Kentavious Caldwell-Pope contract in general, because on the one hand, we get a player, only 25. We get a year to basically for him to showcase himself and bring out what he can do. And he's had no shortage of opportunities here in Los Angeles, and that's been great. On the other hand, we get to see, hey, is he a shooting guard that fits in with our team? If not, we cut ties at the end of the year, no love lost, no problems at all. And yet, you know that 20, like you said, 20 million is there. And we'll be able to use that, maybe re-engage KCP on maybe a more, I wouldn't say more team-friendly contract, but basically just that for our team if, we swing and miss on others. I'm not really sure how ownership management, feel about, obviously, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. I actually like him, and I would like to see him back for a couple more seasons, but I digress here. It's really good to see that the cap flexibility here, making that trade and letting go of D'Angelo Russell, who I really did want in LA, but whatever. But letting him go as a sweetener to get rid of Timothy Mozgov and his contract so that we will be able to have Brook Lopez and all that money come off the books this offseason. Like, these moves were fiscally responsible for a Lakers team that, let's be real, I mean, we saw that on the very first night of last year's free agency where we signed Mozgov and
Ding.
Huh?
And Luol Deng, yeah, that
I
was
about to say, I couldn't even get out my mouth.
That was an awful, unbelievable stretch for the Lakers. And to be sitting here 18, 20 months, 23, however long, I can't count, months later with a team that is in this good of a position is kind of unbelievable.
It really is. And I'm not mistaken, it was 2 years ago, but it still feels so raw and so real.
It still hurts as a person. It still hurts you.
Oh my goodness, right to the core. But yeah, such a turnaround, and credit to the front office. Magic really can't keep his mouth shut when he should. But him and Rob Pelinka have really paired up, and of course with Jeannie Buss to really make some good, solid moves. They're going to put the Lakers in good position to really lay the foundation and add to this roster and build around this. Maybe get a top tier free agent. Possibly not. I would prefer to grab some more young guys that can play now. But again, there's a lot of flexibility, not only on the cap, but also with what kind of players they can get and what kind of moves they can make moving forward. So financial flexibility and really team direction flexibility. What if we don't bring back Randall? Who we go in exchange for that? Will we make a run at Aaron Gordon? Would he fit in? There's so many questions to go as far as the offseason is concerned. But to actually have an offseason, we can go, okay, we have the opportunity to make some good, solid moves, and we trust the people in charge to make those moves, which for the past, I would say, 6 or 7 seasons, we couldn't have both of those. It was one or the other. Yeah, we're in position to go at these free agents or, to make the right draft pick, or we're in position that I trust that our front office can make some moves, even if we really don't have any moves to make. So it's really refreshing to kind of be in that situation where both can be true. Why can't we have good things, us Laker fans? Like, why can't we have both?
Now, I'm going to sort of argue that maybe you've had decades and decades of good things, but
oh wow, I mean, before my time though.
Kobe and Shaq was not before your time, Corbin. Okay,
you're right. And as I've grown older, I've appreciated the fill in the gap veterans that we've slotted in over the years to coincide with them. But back then, I mean, I'm not gonna lie to you, it was Kobe and Shaq and Derek Fisher at the bailout 3. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, like you said, this is a team that sort of built itself up in terms of like flexibility, in terms of youth. And now the impending question, and I think one of the most interesting topics that surrounding this team is Julius Randle is in a contract year. And then there's no doubt about that. But he has played tremendously well. He has really showcased what he can do playing the center position, what he can do as a scorer. And I think has been as impressive as any Laker out there. When you look at what he's done, he's averaging 16.2 points a game on 55% shooting and 8 rebounds and 2.6 assists. This is a guy who's really shown himself to be a valuable piece of this Lakers organization. And now we come to the big moment. He is a restricted free agent this year, which will allow the Lakers to match him. But if they do, they sort of forsake that path where they're going to have the double max capability next summer. You talk about the good, you talk about the bad, but all of a sudden we're coming up on this crossroad moment where the Julius Randle question is going to present itself. And I don't really know how the Lakers are going to answer this. Obviously Rob Pelinka and Magic Johnson are a lot smarter about this than we are, but what do you think is the right path to go from here? How do you handle this? And how do you continue to build this team from here?
I mean, I would hope that keeping Randall will be a priority, or at least something that they've at least thought of. So it's a difficult decision. There's some work that's going to have to be done. I mean, they already kind of got started on that path where they made some, basically cleared a little easier of path to that at the trade deadline when they traded Jordan Clarkson and Larry Nance to the Cavs. Clarkson's salary for the 2018-2019 season is $12.5 million, and Nance's $2.3 million. So by trading both of those for the expiring contracts of Isaiah Thomas and Channing Frye, they've opened up a little more much-needed cap space, and they've also made the chase for 2 other max players more realistic while also being able to look at Julius Randle. But there's still a few more issues and a few more stumbling blocks in the way, chief of those being Luol Deng. He's set to make $18 million next summer. And so finding an avenue to trade him without being able to take any money back would be pretty tough, and it would give the Lakers that same amount in addition to cap space. So if you had that along with the money that's been opened up with the expiring contract of Isaiah Thomas, and it's to be determined whether we bring him back, and Channing Frye, and then adding in the estimated cap hold for the first round acquired from the Cavs, they would have opened up an additional $31.1 million in cap space, which would bring their total amount of cap room to about 65.7, and that's without a little bit of smaller cap hold, roster holds, and things of that note. But that would open up a lot. And this is per Forum Blue and Gold article, and even referencing an article from Eric Pickness. But the Lakers will roughly need about $66.3 million in cap space to sign a 10-year max free agent, which would be someone like LeBron James at 35% of the cap, and a 9-year max free agent, someone like Paul George at 30% of the cap. So a trade of Deng would leave them only $600,000 short of having the space they need. And they could get to that number pretty easily if they waived one or both of the non-guaranteed deals of Ivica Zubac or Thomas Bryant, which I would keep Zubac, but that's my thing. So there's a way to work around that. It's just going to take a lot of roster finagling and also seeing if anyone will take Luol Deng's contract off their hands. And if so, you have to attach a sweetener to that. So would it be a Josh Hart? Would it be a future first-round pick or a second-round pick? Would it be a first-round pick and Josh Hart and maybe 2 seconds? There's different combinations that you would have to throw in there with Luol Deng to even get another team to take him. And that's in this rather tightened cap environment with free agency where there's going to be a lot of teams that really don't have that money. So it's a lot of, like I said, it's a lot of roadblocks there. I would hope sign Julius Randle first and foremost, and then if we can, go for the max free agents, because LeBron James is always an enigma to me. I'm not sure if he will leave. I don't know if you know as well. We're not sure if he's going to stay in Cleveland. It's kind of a crapshoot with that. And then Paul George, almost just as much of one. And I honestly think he's leaning toward Oklahoma City, even with his struggles and the way they played, because he knows that in Oklahoma City he can just align himself with a Batman that's his Robin. But again, moving far ahead, I really think that there's a way to do it. I just would hope that the Lakers would focus on Julius Randle first, get him out, sign him to a nice, player-friendly, team-friendly extension, and then see what they could do after that. But there are ways, and it's been in a couple of different articles out here that they could do both.
That is interesting because it sort of has been pitched, to the general NBA population as a dichotomy. Either you can keep Randall and sort of mess around with whatever cap room you have left, or you can pursue the two maxes. The keep Randall one max thing is a little bit different than anything I'd heard, so that's a really interesting little tidbit. Now, let's change gears and sort of talk hypothetically for a second. This is a young roster, obviously not a tremendous defensive team, had their holes. They played decently. I mean, I certainly won't take away from their efforts on the defensive end, but this is obviously a team that needs to improve if they're going to be a playoff team next year or in the future. So say you bring Randall back and you do have that one max. Who is the guy out there? Is it Paul George? Is it LeBron? Who is the guy that you go after as that secondary piece to sort of help this team in its woes, which I believe personally is on the defensive end of the ball?
That's really good one. I haven't – obviously, the front runner answer will be, Paul George. He'll cover all that. He'll be our leading scorer, our best defender. But it's really interesting to think about that, as well as someone who we think could conceivably fit those holes in free agency. I'm looking at it right now, and I don't know. I would say, and maybe this is more of a dark horse candidate here, maybe not one talk. I would say we already have him in KCP. I really like the way that he plays on the defensive end. He's not really making any game-changing, lockdown, shutdown defense, but he more than holds his own. We've seen him against the Warriors and against the Cavs, even guard bigger players like a LeBron James, like a Kevin Durant, and hold his own. I mean, they're still going to get theirs, but for someone 6'5", that is encouraging. He's still 25. The second half of the season, he's really just been shooting the blood out the ball. I'm sorry, that's a little street reference there, but he's really been shooting the ball very well. And I like it, and I think that we could get him back conceivably on a pretty team-friendly deal, and that would work out. Maybe not the balloon contract that he already had here, but something over 3 seasons. I don't even know the numbers to even put out there, but we could throw that. That's definitely an option. For more scoring, there is Seth Curry going to be out there, but he is coming off that injury that had him out all year, so that's a question mark. We make a run at a big like Northern Noel. I mean, after his past season, I don't really know how he fits in, but that's someone I personally was intrigued by. There's a couple of people in here, Sean Kilpatrick. But he could be a slot piece. There's certain players here that I could see conceivably fitting in, but I'm not really sure how well they would,
So there are a couple of different options that I have sort of kicked around, and one of them is to kick the can down the road again one more year, similar to what they did with Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. Giving him one big contract keeps them free to move on. And the Players Union was not thrilled about the Kentavious Caldwell-Pope contract because it seemed like a handshake deal amongst all these people, Rich Paul included, which if you're keeping score at home happens to be a part of the organization that represents LeBron James. So it looked like right? How weird is that? But the concept of the contract, I think, was really interesting in that what they did was they overpaid a player for a year to let him prove himself. He didn't get the deal that they thought maybe he was going to get, the longer deal, the $100 million deal when he became a free agent. And so maybe there was a little bit of a handshake, but in actuality, setting the conspiracy theories aside, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope did fill a role for the Lakers this year, as you've talked about. And at the same time, he kept that cap space free. Now, that's a possibility again this year. When you look at a player like Isaiah Thomas, who may need a year of healthy play to prove himself and has not been tremendously ineffective playing alongside Lonzo Ball, even on the defensive end, their defensive rating together, I had this pulled up. Yeah, it's 107, which is not great, but it's not as terrible as you thought it would be with those two playing together, since Ball can kind of guard it too. So one of the options I think that this team can still explore is to kick the can down the road a year. Give Isaiah a big contract, maybe bring Caldwell-Pope back again for another year, and sort of free themselves up to be competitive in the 2019 free agent class, which includes Klay Thompson, who I think would fit in quite nicely, and also Kawhi Leonard, who is amid a turmoil of his own. So that's one path I considered. The other path that I had considered was possibly to try to build with a younger guy. And when you touched on this with Aaron Gordon, Jabari Parker, Marcus Smart, there are a number of names out there from that 2014 draft class who are available, who are restricted free agents this year, who could fit in pretty nicely with this roster. Now, Aaron Gordon is not a name I like because of the development of Kuzma and Randall. If you decide you want to keep both of those guys, I probably don't love Parker or Gordon to fit with this roster, but Marcus Smart is a really enticing piece coming off a pretty reasonable deal. The market sort of set by that Lou Williams contract. So there are a lot of ways that you can go about building this roster that don't necessarily involve Paul George or LeBron James, and will still keep this team on a competitive track for next season.
And that is true. You made a couple of good, strong points. And I'm sort of with that only because I think if you give this team another year development, things become more clear. I mean, right now we're starting to see like bits and pieces of the puzzle. Okay. Lonzo Ball really needs to work on his shooting. Is he really, and again, don't want to jump ahead of myself, but is he indeed the point guard of the future? Because remember, we said the same thing about D'Angelo Russell for 2 seasons and then he was gone. So, 2 to 3. But the point I'm trying to get at is that it's not set in stone. However, he was drafted second. So is Russell. Like, there's no guarantee here. So if, Lonzo with his just transcendent floor awareness and ability to rebound, a really smart defender, a great passer, but you can't shoot a lick. You're on almost Ricky Rubio. Not almost. You're on Ricky Rubio's shooting levels. Do the Lakers, take that in their mind and go, you know what? We could keep him and build around him, cover for his deficiencies, have Randall take on a bigger share of let's say the ball handling duties and just get Lonzo to like set up, because he's better shooting obviously off the catch than off the dribble just because of his unorthodox, very much like mine shooting form. But I make mine anyway. Point being, are they going to go there and say, okay, we can go all in right now, let's build around what we have, or wait another year, see if Brandon Ingram really does take that next step, or is he just going to kind of plateau? Is Lonzo Ball going to bounce back, in a strong way, give him a summer's worth of development, see what he becomes, how Josh Hart, Kyle Kuzma, and then go in 2019 and go after a bigger free agent crop that may even be more open to moving, given what happens in the next season. You never know. This time last year, we didn't think Kyrie would have been switching teams. You know what I mean? So, and that's just an example to say that nothing's set in stone, especially in this NBA. So on that note, I definitely agree with you. However, I think if you do have the opportunity to go out of LeBron James or go out of Paul George, you get that. But yeah, why not lock down this team? There's players here who, yes, we have question marks about Brandon Ingram. I have question marks about Julius Randle and his shooting ability. That would really unlock his game in a major way. But the point being, you could run these players here have potential. You see it. Bring them back. We're a team on the rise. Not many people. I mean, the Nuggets are like, I guess, our next direct competitors with young players, and who knows if they have a shakeup or two, coming down the line, and then see what happens. Look toward 2019, keep it flexibility, and just grow with it.
I wrote an article on the Lakers back on the day of the trade deadline, which immediately in hindsight seemed like a terrible idea given the trade of Larry Nance and Jordan Clarkson. I immediately regretted writing about the Lakers' future, but I did write about it, and I said sort of similarly what you said, is that you go and swing big because you are the Lakers, because you do have that name recognition, and you try to land a LeBron James or a Paul George. But and this is the part, that is important. I think Lakers fans, because they're a very large fan base and a very very vocal fan base, what you have is a lot of people who, if the results don't happen immediately, sort of take to Twitter or Reddit or wherever and sort of decry the team as, well, we don't get big free agents, or this is a disaster. When in actuality, I don't think that if they strike out this summer, it is necessarily a disaster. And exactly for the reasons that you outlined, in that Brandon Ingram has had amazing development this year, both as a scorer and as a ball handler. When Lonzo Ball was out there through that stretch through the end of January and February, that he really got into playing a lot of point guard, and he looked pretty effective doing it. He looked like a pretty quality playmaker and a guy who could get his own shot at 6'10" when he had to. So there were some interesting things there. And I think that if you do strike out You can just reload for next year. You can say to yourself, okay, we have a shot at two guys who have ties to the LA area in Klay Thompson and Kawhi Leonard through various ways. And you can take another year and just kind of look at these guys. And I think that while a lot of Lakers fans may view that as a failure, I think it's probably the furthest thing from a failure to run it back and to have another look at Lonzo Ball, a healthy Lonzo Ball, Brandon Ingram, Kyle Kuzma, and even Julius Randle if you go that route.
I'm right there with you. And that's a measured take. I mean, as a Lakers fan, inherently, I can't agree with you in that sense because no, why not? Let's go mortgage our entire future, sign every half-decent free agent in the book. No, I'm kidding. But obviously, that's a more measured take and something that I think the Lakers should consider, especially if we think about it. Magic, you already got in trouble now twice for tampering. Although the second one was dubious.
It was what a terrible thing. Oh my God. Yeah, I cannot.
At worst, it was dubious. I know. I sat there and I was sitting there going, "Are you serious?" I mean, if you interview anyone and say, "Are you not supposed to say they're a good player?" Oh no, he's horrible, man. Come on now. I mean, those rules are just laughable.
Saying that Giannis was a good player, and I don't have the exact quote in front of me, but I remember the essence of it was basically exactly that. Just like he can't say that Giannis is a good player. I mean, he can't speak the truth.
I know it was something that was just annoying, and then I was very upset by it, and I mean. Whatever, but I'm saying I really could go on all day about that. But what I will say is that having already made a couple of hiccups here, this is your first year in this role, Magic. Let's say the free agent market looks pretty static. The players that are available aren't players you want. The players that aren't available are players that you're going for. That's okay. Tuck it in. You still have a very young roster. You would still be excited for this team if you had no cap space available for any free agents next year. Just because these players are all so young and there's so much room for development here. And so far, I mean, at least in Brandon Ingram's case and Julius Randle, we've seen it. May not be as big as we've wanted, but we've definitely seen that happen. So that's fine. Pack it in, move on to 2019. I mean, honestly, I've heard so many players with ties to LA area that haven't actually come back to LA that I'm more jaded on that note, but I do feel that, hey, we are the Lakers. We have that championship pedigree. And we have a core of young players similar to the Philadelphia 76ers that you could grow with, that you can lead, that are ready to play now, that have had 2 to 3 years to be on their own and develop at their own rate, and now just need someone to take charge. And who knows, maybe that player could be a Julius Randle, in this year. Maybe that player through example and play could be Brandon Ingram after his third season, after his third season here. So that gives them another chance to see if, hey, can we build these players? Can we take these roles and these archetypes and kind of bring them along from the inside, bring them on in from the house? Or do we have to go and outsource for that? Because you may not even have to go and get the type of player if you already have them on their team and you just want them to kind of grow in their role. You know what I mean?
All right. So I got one last question for you. We've sort of covered everything, but there's the impending question that I think, particularly if Kawhi Leonard doesn't play this year, of what's going to happen with Kawhi. You can call it the Kawhisis, or whatever you want to call it, whatever pun you want to put on there. But the situation has obviously turned a little bit away from what the Spurs wanted it to be, maybe a little bit away from what Kawhi wanted it to be. But he's a free agent next year. He might be able to be signed by the Lakers. I mean, obviously there are about 10 million things between now and then that can happen. However, he might be available this summer. So let me ask you the big question. Say the Lakers are holding on to their pieces, their stock in the war chest. How much is too much to give up for Kawhi Leonard, a player who's been top 3 in MVP voting for the past 2 seasons, probably the best two-way forward in the game, but a player who has missed an entire season? What do you see as cashing in too many assets? Is Ingram and Ball, is that too much? Is Ingram and Kuzma? What pieces would you not be willing to give up to land a Kawhi Leonard?
I know Ingram would definitely be a guarantee. If we could get Ingram, maybe someone like a Josh Hart, one of those players that the Spurs just love to take in and turn into a Spurs all-star. Absolutely. And maybe a first or second, and maybe a first round pick in the future second. I would hope that would be ideal. I do not think we give Lonzo Ball for two reasons. One, the Spurs seem pretty set on having DeJounte Murray as their point guard of the future, so bringing in Lonzo would almost be a direct clash, and definitely an awkward one because I don't think they'd be able to play in the same backcourt.
No.
Defensively, possibly, but offensively, just a cramped fit with two iffy shooters. So I don't think that would work. If we gave him Kuzma, I think that would be a little bit too much because, and this may just be my Laker fandom going on. I mean, we did have the Celtics fans, was it yesterday, going, "Oh my God, I don't really know if we can give up Jaylen Brown and
Terry Rozier,
Jason Tatum, I don't know if we can give him one of those guys, man. Let's see if we can give him a Terry Rozier and Marcus Morris in a second. I think that would be the trick, So I don't want to be one of those guys, but I do think that if we give Ingram and Kuzma, no superstars really going to get their value back in a trade. That's not how these trades go.
Sure,
you're not going to get equal value. You would hope definitely Ingram. That's a blue chipper for you. You get a future pick, first rounder. That's something. The potential's there. Second round pick and give him a piece to work with in a Josh Hart. And I think that would ideally be what I would do if I was the Lakers and trading for Kawhi, because Kawhi is top 10 talent. Yeah, he is still coming off this injury, and I get that, and I think we all understand that. But when you have that talent, you kind of go for it, And that would be I mean, still just 26. He was the cornerstone. And if he doesn't leave, we'll continue the cornerstone for the Spurs team. So if we can do it, do it. I mean, obviously, though, my question for you is this. If you had to give up Ingram and Kyle Kuzma, coming from the Lakers side, would you do it?
Man, you put me on a spot here.
I'm sorry.
End of the season this year, the Spurs call me and they say, we'll give you Kawhi for Kuzma and Ingram, and then whatever the salaries are to make that match.
Josh Hart, probably, yeah. I know.
Okay, I'll tell you what. I will say yes on one condition. My condition is that if I'm Magic Johnson and Rob Pelinka, I believe we can land another name. Or maybe even two other names. I wouldn't swap those two if that's my only move on the table. Like I wouldn't trade Kuzma and Ingram if that's the only move I have in the chamber. Now, if I can line up a couple more moves, maybe bring in a Paul George, maybe make a pitch towards somebody else here or there, maybe move another piece, then yeah, I think I'd do that because of the talent that Kawhi Leonard brings to the table and sort of how you can build around him. But if that's the only move, no, I kind of just want to stick with this young core and let it develop. So I sort of hedged my bets in answering that question, but that is my answer.
I get you. I would have done probably the same thing. I mean, looking at some trade articles on the Ringer and other things of that sort, it seems to be the going rate would be Brandon Ingram, Kyle Kuzma, Josh Hart, 2 first-round picks, and something of that sort. I do think in my own head that would be a little bit too much of a haul, especially with the way that Kyle Kuzma's been playing. But
I think that's way too much with Kawhi. I mean, unless it's a sign and trade where he ups it, for a new deal or whatever. I think with Kawhi being a free agent next year, I would be hesitant to give away much of any value for him because there is that possibility, however remote, that you can ink Kawhi Leonard for nothing, and that you can add Kawhi Leonard without giving up Ingram or Kuzma or Ball or even Josh Hart. So, there's a lot going on with that I think we're going to see in the next couple of months sort of sort itself out. But there are a lot of paths out in front of these Lakers, and a lot of them are very, very bright.
Right there with you, man. One of the brightest futures we have. I've never been more excited in the past, I want to say 5-6 years, to be a Lakers fan. And it's going to be really big and really important to see what comes up here this offseason, but I'm looking forward to it. I am all here for that.
One just quick note. I don't think that you're going to top a trade offer of Terry Rozier, Abdel Nader, and Jabari Bird for Kawhi Leonard. Just saying.
There's a trader for Nader.
Yeah, the Celtics are gonna send that away, and they're gonna get Matt Kawhi Leonard to add to their core. Basically, don't ever bet against Danny Ainge. Is the moral of this story. I spent a whole hour saying nice things about the Lakers, and it hurt me personally. But now,
to your core.
Right straight to my core. But now I got to get my cutting in and say you're never going to beat Danny Ainge when it comes to a trade because nobody does. Anyway, Corbin, I appreciate you coming on the show, man. I appreciate you taking your time out of your busy day and finally linking up with me in schedules to talk Lakers, because this is, as we've just gone over, like, this is one of the most interesting stories from a franchise that we traditionally sort of see in the limelight and has taken a step back, particularly since Kobe's retirement. And it looks like they're going to be back in the game maybe as early as next year, but you just sort of never know how these things are going to shake out for the offseason. So thanks for coming on board, man, and talking to us about everything and just bringing us up to speed, particularly with the moving pieces of the trades that could happen to sort of free up that cap space. That was some really good stuff, man. I appreciate that.
Hey, of course. Thank you for having me on, man. I know you're busy too. A lot going on here. A lot going on, but I do appreciate it.
So speaking of which, you got anything you want to get a plug in for before I let you go? Anything that you're working on or doing right now?
I mean, I'm gonna say follow. I'm gonna just do the company line partially because that's where I'm at right now. But follow at 94 Feet Report. That Twitter handle. I try to put some questions out there, start some conversations, a general sprinkling of hot takes. Come up there, start a conversation, get some of our work that's coming out. Especially come this offseason, it's going to be big, man. So catch on early through our playoff coverage and everything. Also, the Swingmen, man, we have a blast up there. Every Friday comes out. I would definitely tune into that. Get your daily NBA fix with a little bit of humor from some budding failed comedians here.
Ain't that the truth?
Exactly. And other than that, yeah, that's really pretty much it. I'm Corbin NBA, but I kind of switch between that and the 94 Feet Report. I'm basically the same content. Just try to get some hot takes going, some Laker fandom in there with some general NBA information. So definitely, man, follow me there. Appreciate it.
All right, man. We'll talk to you soon, and I'm sure we'll have you on talk playoffs here in a couple of weeks, and then on top of that, I'm sure we're going to be talking in July and into the off season about how the Lakers have shaped up. Because as I've said 100 times, this is a great story and one I want to keep following. So, Corbin, appreciate you coming on, man. We'll talk to you later. Okay.
All right, man. Definitely, will do.